you spoke about India and the US being friends. But explain to us, and I ask you this question in your capacity as a former foreign minister who understands this. So on one hand, we have President Trump saying that Narendra Modi, our prime minister, is his good friend. Yet you see this barrage of statements from various people within the Trump administration, people very close to him, who are being seen as disparaging India. And clearly this is not something that is said in diplomacy, and certainly not to friends. Is there a method to this madness that you could explain to our viewers? Because many of us and our viewers are confused. You say something one day before and next morning something else.
So I think we have to have a historic perspective on this. I think Winston Churchill once said that the farther backward you can look, the farther forward you're likely to see. You know, there has been decades now of closer cooperation between US and India. So there's been now a few weeks where there have been some hiccups, or maybe you would say more than hiccups, but I think this will pass. I don't think there is a shift in the medium long-term cooperation between India and US. I think there's too much common interests that bring them together. And look at the US, you know, the biggest American companies would not run without Indians. And the Indian diaspora is contributing very much also in the US economy. I feel that there is a lot of general affinity towards India in the US. I think the same in India. You know, until this recent hiccup, I think Trump was more popular in India in the polls than in any other country in the world, including the United States. So maybe that has now changed, but you know, I think there will be a normalization in this. And when you saw the exchanges between Prime Minister Modi and also President Trump on the Prime Minister's birthday, it couldn't be warmer. So maybe this is a warm-up to what I think will come in the coming weeks with the breakthrough.
Yeah, can I take one quick follow-up to this? A lot of people say that President Trump has failed on his core agenda of peace in Ukraine. Hasn't happened. The Hamas has not released hostages. Many other items in his agenda are still work in progress. A broader question to you. In your view, is the American century getting over?
Many interesting both premises and questions in that question. So let me then, for the sake of the argument, also say that although things are going well in the US, when you look at the domestic economy. If we met a year ago, a big question would be, oh, will the US economy have a hard landing or a soft landing? And there's no landing currently. It's still growing. It's, the Europeans are envious of the growth in the US. They're also very well prepared for the new technologies. They also have a lot of capital. There are small worries now related to inflation and all that, but overall the US economy is very robust. And that was the main reason why Trump was elected. It was the two I's, inflation and immigration. And both of those things he is now dealing with. Of course, the international agenda is more complex. It's true that the outcome of the Alaska meeting is to be seen, but every war needs to end sooner or later. Also, the war in Ukraine will end, but Mr. Putin will need to feel that he has more to lose by continuing than to continue. He still, you know, only has 18% of Ukraine. He doesn't even have Donbass, and all these areas he has said that that's part of Russia. So he might want a little bit more before he then sit down at the table. But it's a very, very sad humanitarian story. Okay. On Gaza, of course, Mr. Netanyahu, I think also surprises President Trump with some of the moves in Gaza, and especially related to the terrible humanitarian situation we're seeing there now.
So I want to come back to Gaza and steps that have been taken, including the bombing of Qatar recently by Israel, and what impact will that have on trade. But before I come to international affairs, that way I want to come back to India for a moment, and I want to ask you about some of the reforms that Prime Minister Modi has just carried out, including the GST reforms. Yeah. In your view, will these reforms help mitigate some of the challenges posed by the US tariffs? Should tariffs not go down immediately by whatever percentage that we are hoping? And will it help spur the economy further? So contributing 18% to global economy already, but contributing domestically and internationally with these GST reforms.
I think those reforms were very pertinent. I think they were very timely. So that will contribute positively to further economic growth in India. You could also say that if you look at the India-China relationship, it's not bad for the world that these two big nations also communicate well with each other.
Yes.
They will compete in some areas and they have border issues and all that. But overall, you can say that it's not so negative. It's rather positive. So then you can say on the other question about growth in the Indian economy, also related to the tariffs. US and India has in common that you have big home markets.
Yes.
So you're not so much relying on trade as others. I think trade is maybe 20% of the Indian economy. If you go to Germany, it's 50%. And I think if you go to China, it's also very, very big. It's an export-led economy. So even with the tariffs that then the US administration has now introduced, it is maybe like 2% of India's GDP is affected with it. But what I said earlier on is about the future. India is developing. Like a few years ago, you were not even manufacturing almost iPhones and mobiles. Now you're the second largest exporter in the world. And when you want to take India forward, you want to have access to the US market. So that's why you also want to break this impasse. So I'm not so worried about the short-term implications that will be dealt with, but medium, longer term, it's in both nations' interest to find a good way of trading with each other. And you know, the Americans, contrary to many others, they do consume.
Yes.
In many other nations, people just save the money. For example, in China, the savings rates are incredibly high, but the American consumers are still comfortable, so they buy stuff, also from India, including services and digital trade.
And is that also helping India, the services, the digital trade, especially when goods trade is facing some headwinds?
Exactly. It is just my point in the last weeks. We see that manufactured goods, the demand and the trade in manufactured goods is even contracting.
Yeah.
While we see services and digital is growing much higher. I don't think trade will, again, short-term, medium-term, be the engine of growth globally like it used to be. Now, trade is growing less than the global GDP. So what is driving growth now, I think, are the new technologies. And these will be the drivers of growth in the years to come. And for India, it's like a very sweet spot here, because you're strong on services, you are strong on digital trade, less so on manufacturing, even if you're trying to improve. So the demand now is like kind of bespoke for India, but then you need also access to the markets to grow further. You don't want to be met with 50% tariff. Yeah. You know, you want to, and that's why the EU deal is also, I guess, important for India.